Shahnameh Stories. The story of Tahmures, the Div Binder, continued. Isfahan, pearl of Persia, and as the famous 16th century saying goes, Nisf Jahan, half of the world. It was from Qazvin to Isfahan that in 1598 Shah Abbas the Great moved his kingdom's capital, making it more central and therefore safer from the constant Ottoman threat. Considered as one of the greatest rulers of Iranian history, Shah Abbas came to the throne in 1588 at the age of 17, and over the next 41 years established Iran not only as a military and an economic power, but as an ideological one, where foreigners and religious minorities were welcome. He was a great builder and rebuilt and embellished the ancient city with magnificent new mosques, baths, colleges, caravanserais, and palaces, making Isfahan a vibrant crossroad of culture, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and the pinnacle of Safavid architecture and supremacy. At the center of Isfahan, the spectacular Naqsh-e-Jahan Square, meaning the image of the world, was the symbolic representation of Abbas's newly centralized government of the Safavid Empire, and a powerful statement of the Shah's unique strength. Its visionary plan enabled Shah Abbas to gather the three main components of power around him: the power of the clergy, represented by the Masjid-e-Shah, the power of the merchants, represented by the Imperial Bazaar, and of course the power of the Shah himself, residing in the Ali Qapu Palace. On the south side of the square is the Masjid-e-Shah, or today the Imam Mosque, an exquisite example of Safavid architecture and remarkable for its unique Persian identity. Across the enormous square on the north side is the Qaysariye Grand Bazaar, or the Bazar Buzurg, one of the largest and oldest bazaars of the Middle East, with some parts dating back 1,000 years. Its gateway is adorned with frescoes depicting Shah Abbas's war with the Uzbeks, painted by his most famous artist, Reza Abbasi. On the western side of the square is the Masjid-e-Sheikh Lutfullah, a small mausoleum-like structure that was used by members of the Shah's family for private worship. And directly across it on the eastern side of the square is the Ali Qapu Palace. The Ali Qapu, meaning Imperial Gate, sat at the entrance to the Safavid palaces that stretched through the center of the city. Decorated with wall paintings by Reza Abbasi and other court painters, the Shah celebrated Nowruz there for the first time in 1597, and it was where he entertained noble visitors and foreign ambassadors and watched polo matches from the balcony of his pavilion overlooking the square. Like his grandfather before him, Shah Abbas was an active patron of painting and book production, and his reign was a golden age for the arts in Iran. This masterpiece, by the supreme painter of the period Reza Abbasi, is one of 22 folios from a partial copy of the Shahnameh attributed to the early reign of Shah Abbas, and of which we will also discuss the White Div. Even though manuscript illustration never again reached the splendor of Shah Tahmasp's reign, this Shahnameh contains some of Reza's earliest known works, after which his style changed dramatically and ushered in a new period of Persian painting. Today, Reza Abbasi and Shah Abbas's artists are also known for their single-page works, many of which are portraits intended for collection in albums or muraqqa, in accordance with Shah Abbas's personal preference and the larger market for patrons. Here, upon Reza's living, breathing landscape, Tahmures and his soldiers charge at 6 robust, groomed, and elegantly dressed Deves. Each Deve is differentiated by face, colour, character, and clothes. They are further refined by their ornate, raised gold jewellery and controlled bestiality, wherein there are no visible private parts and none except the leader have claws. Rich multi-layered fabrics with gold sashes and silk and fur lining lift, flow, and swing to accentuate the muscular vigour of the Deves. 4 text columns of narrative hang above and in front of the composition, steadying and locking in the top right of the vibrant landscape that picks up momentum as it rushes down and pours over and out of the non-existent frame on the left. Swept up in the sway, trees and twigs shriek in between the crevices of the waves of molten, moss-covered boulders. Its rise and ebb move across the barren lavender, pale green and gold hillside, scaling higher and steeper to form a lilac rock crest that breaks out into a twisting, fantasy-like, towering outcrop. At its pinnacle, bushy trees and electrified branches and roots writhe over and next to a rock-wielding, handsomely attired white Deve, who looks down pensively from under his flaming eyelids and brows as he adjusts his aim at the soldier cowering below him. The flowing gold in between the light green and lavender casts a vibrant glow over the exquisite adornments of the horses, soldiers, and Deves, while in the outer margins, absorbed by the gold of the landscape, gazelles, a fox, a lion, and rabbits run, prowl, prance, and play amid the flowers and plants. This type of populated marginal decoration that had been used in Persian painting since the early 16th century was luxuriantly ornate and refined in the work of Reza Abbasi and continued to be popular until the end of the Safavid period. In the lower foreground, a white Deve turns questioningly to his light brown companion striding towards him. Effortlessly holding a large color-coordinated boulder, his flaming eyelids and brows communicate his surprise. His joker-like smile contrasts the grotesque mouth and sharp-fanged chatter of the brown Deve, oblivious to the arrow in his burly hunched back and his curved horn about to trip up the central black Deve above him. Behind him, a black Deve wearing large hooped earrings turns and winces. His gold eyebrows rise in dismay as he watches a sword slice through his shoulder, while his tail loops furtively out from underneath his gold-embroidered orange tunic to trip up his attacker's horse. In the middle, the sanguine blue Deve cuts a dashing figure against the gold landscape as he darts out in front of the soldier in hot pursuit and paces away on 3 limbs. Unfazed by the winged spear piercing the middle of his detailed vertebra, he turns to cast a patronizing glance at his attacker through his fangs and spiffy moustache. At the center, the ripped, elegantly attired and bejeweled black Deve, bulging with muscular power, confronts Tahmures. Sword in hand, one gold eye glares fiendishly from under the dripping blood, while with gritted fangs, his clawed left grabs the crashing mace in an effort to block the battering. His snake tail, like the one in the previous video, takes it upon itself to step up as well. However, this one, notwithstanding its marvelous golden rim mouth, falls short not only in the piddling antenna that shoots out of its gaping gullet, but in its misplaced sense of direction, as its command performance hiss is dispatched to the wrong side. Perhaps the most unusual and stylized portrait of Dives is this sign painting by Moin Mossavar, a pupil of Reza Abbasi and a significant artist in 17th century Safavid Iran. This painting comes from the first half of the 1655 Shahnameh, the second volume of which is in the Chester Beatty Library in Dublin. A prolific artist, Moin's palette is characterized by an intense pink, bluish lavender and mint green often used for mountains and landscape, wine red used for robes and other articles of clothing, and portraits of men with very long moustaches that populate his Shahnameh illustrations. The composition can be divided vertically down the middle. On the right are Tahmures and his steel-helmeted forces on horseback, and on the left the Dives, who are on foot and, as narrated by Ferdowsi, flee before the onslaught. The setting is a barren, fuchsia-coloured, sloping hillside with tiny, evenly dispersed tufts of grass. Seemingly heaved upward to the left by small, sketched-out trees, it forms a craggy, moss-covered cliff from behind which 4 multicoloured Div heads and shoulders look down pensively at the battle charge below. To its right, a mauve-tipped mint green ridge crowned by a tree crests like a breaking wave to form the top arc of the composition directly above Tahmures's plumed helmet. The tilted heads of 3 soldiers peer over from behind it, emphasizing the direction of the battle charge, even as their standards counterbalance them by protruding into the right margin. Every hue and color is meticulously matched and mirrored in symphonic harmony. The blue and vermilion of the top Div heads are picked up by the fleeing blue and red Divs at the bottom and back up through Tahmures's red clothes and blue saddle pad before returning full circle to the top right standard bearers. Similarly, the mauve and ice green in the wave of rock that crests over Tahmures are picked up in the top left Divs and carried down in the green Div exiting the painting as he turns to watch his color counterpart soldier slice off the red Div's arm. The limited palette continues in the main scene with the addition of a black and white Div. The black Div, his arms aloft, holding a shield and sword that breaks out of the left margin, is the most intriguing in his features that are outlined in gold, reminiscent of Art Deco. At the bottom center, a downcast, wounded white Div with black horns staggers out of the painting, shoved out by horses that mirror his color combination. The black and white is again picked up in the faces and moustaches of the soldiers that circle the eye back up the right side to the tilted heads of the soldiers. In the middle of the painting, astride a chestnut charger, Tahmures rises in his saddle and lunges forward to crash a bulbous mace down on a flinching blue Div, who buckles under the force of the blow. However, unlike other depictions where the mace splatters the Div's brains, except for the trickle from the central red Div's shoulder and the small brooch of blood on the white Div, the scene is bloodless. Filled with soul, the despondent movements and brooding expressions of the Divs create clusters of humanity, while those of the soldiers and the horses are nuanced with hints of individuality. The silent, ruminative scene, with its solemn and dignified Divs, is a stark contrast to the boisterous, zany, comical deeds of Sultan Muhammad. Far from bestial, these humanoid Art Deco divs are contemplative, with an almost erudite demeanour that renders the fact that they will teach Tahmures many skills, including writing and languages, believable. In the next video, we will hear the story of Tahmures' omnipotent son Jamshid, the Shahname's greatest ruler, who by virtue of his far, or divine right of kingship, kept the Devs in subjugation. His legends included the celebration of Nowruz and the magic of the Jam, Jamshid's cup that contained the elixir of immortality. Until his fall from grace and the end of his prosperous reign at the hands of Zahak, the evil king with 2 snakes on his shoulders.